All right, well, welcome everyone to this next edition of 30 Minutes with a Hacker, where we share insights on cybersecurity from a hacker's perspective. My name is Jade Whitty, and I'm in the Security Solutions Group here at Tech Data. And with me here today, and each month when we do these calls, is Brett Scott and Josh Harp, two ethical hackers who are in the trenches every day fighting the bad guys and assisting a number of three-letter acronym departments in the U.S. government. We had some guys here just a few minutes ago. So it's one reason we were running a little bit late. Brett and Josh have key roles also at Tech Data, helping our partners with cybersecurity, running the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, and we're building out the new Tech Data Cyber Range that's currently in the works. In fact, we've started doing a number of things to kind of break ground on that, and that's slated to launch in September timeframe. But specifically, and what is going to be addressed on this call, is Tech Data works with organizations with what are termed cyber exercises. These essentially prepare organizations for what to do when a breach happens and exposes the gaps so they can be shored up. We're going to dive into this topic today so our partners can get a sense of the experience for an end user customer and how you as a partner can provide this much needed service by leveraging the team here at Tech Data. So to tee this up and to talk through the value proposition of the service, I'm going to turn this over to Brett Scott.
Thank you, Jade. So we have been working on cyber exercises that are based on several factors, but one of them is our ISAO, our threat intelligence platform. And what we've done is we take the data, the information we're gathering about stuff that's about to happen or is beginning to happen in the threat intelligence world, and then we put them into cyber exercises, and the experience for the user is immersive. In other words, we put them through a cyber exercise unlike anything that anyone else offers, and there are many reasons for that, but it is a totally new experience with fueled by active and real-time threat intelligence that is going to talk about things that they will encounter in the future. And as a direct result of that, the people and the participants that are going in there, they're able to feel and experience a cyber incident in all reality, just as they would in the real world and will in the real world. The difference is, at the end of the day, they can walk away and nothing happened except they learned and had a great experience. So we are trying to create and foster a very immersive environment which allows the participants to test either their plans, their run books or their playbooks. They might not have those. They might have just a strategy. If not, they might say, hey, let's see how this goes. We really don't have any skin in the game as far as the requirements for the participants. All we're going to do is take the team that is brought to us. We're going to bring them together. We're going to place them into an experience, let them do what they would do in the real world. And at the end of all of that, they will walk away with many, many takeaways. So we just did this for a statewide cyber exercise on behalf of the state that we did it in. And they asked us to help them to do this. And they had an incredible response. They were extremely happy. Now, this is a state that has a lot of plans, had run books, has a lot of rehearsals, they've had security incidents in the past. And the first thing that they said is, there's nothing that's like this out there. We have so many great takeaways. Thank you very much for all of this. And part of the reason why we can get that done is because we give people both a realistic experience, but it's also done in a non-crisis environment, which allows them to learn before there is a crisis. But secondary to all of that, they're able to do it in a time that matches their thinking and their plans. So it is essentially a great walkthrough of exactly all the detail related, and that allows you, the participants, to truly tune their responses and their strategies. So I want to talk to Jade, who was there with us when we did this statewide cyber exercise.
Yeah, and I know you have some quotes as well as some other statistics that you can share after this, but my experience in kind of walking into the room and not really knowing what to expect, you had a room which was kind of set up something similar to this, where you had different tables and you had people sitting in different groups. So you had a tactical team, you had another table, you had the technical team, another table, the executive team, another team, the SOC team. So it was interesting from that and observing that a lot of people are just trying to figure this out and kind of get their bearings themselves, because they're going through this experience not really knowing totally what to expect. And so as we kind of go through this, we may toggle back and forth to giving you kind of my feeling of the room from my experiencing this for the first time. Brett and Josh have done this many times, so this is old hat for them. But I'm trying to kind of give you that experience. So we'll kind of do that little bit, switching back and forth. But I wanted you to kind of touch on some of this as well.
So again, most people's experience with running their run books is actually either done through some sort of very artificial feeling story in a quote unquote tabletop exercise. It feels contrived. It's purely theoretical. It's Q&A. A lot of folks don't really walk away with a lot of value. They don't come away feeling that they have improved as a result of this experience, other than they've been through that experience. There's a minimal value for the traditional tabletop exercise. The cyber exercises that we're doing at the Tech Data Cyber Range breaks ground in 6 completely different and totally new ways, and that is what creates the true connection to the cyber incident itself. But the beautiful thing about this is you're learning it on your own time, on your own schedule, and it's not a crisis where you don't have people yelling at you and urgency and all these other things. And so as a direct result, you can maximize the value of the lessons learned while you're going through it. And then, of course, one of the most difficult things about cybersecurity is if you don't tackle it beforehand, if you're not what they call in the government business left of boom, prior to the boom incident, then you are going to pay a substantial price for learning on the job right of boom or after the cyber incident occurs. And so a company, any organization will benefit tremendously by learning on the left side of boom, because you reduce cost and you reduce time, reduce craziness. And at the end of the day, people are going to truly appreciate the experience that they get before they go through the crisis, especially when you consider that this is all driven from our threat intelligence ISAL, which means they're quite literally going through stuff that's going to happen to them. So by the time it actually does happen to them, they've already been through it once.
And I think the reason, going to Jay's point about people entering the room and being uncomfortable or not knowing how to handle it, I think it goes beyond just the fact that this is a new experience. I think if we look at it from an organizational standpoint, everyone we've always hear about and talk about in security is in silos, and they work within their own silos. And this puts into action people's chartered plans. So operations, communications, the chief information security officer, the tactical team, which is the technical people that are lifting up the security officer, all of those portions and pieces that are holistic to security are actually coming together probably for the first time to actually step through a simulated incident, right? They may have had incidents in the past, but it may not have gone beyond just the chief information officer, right? It may have just stopped there. It didn't have to be an event where there was a potential repercussions of the communications team having to come on and explain why this happened to the organization, or effectively communicate what the organization was doing in terms of this incident. So they're stepping through, do we actually have checks and balances in place so when something occurs, everyone does know how to appropriately respond, just beyond a chartered, hey, this is what we're going to do, right? Because you have a situation where they're going through this incident with their head, like running around with chickens with their heads cut off, which is a good thing, because this is a place where you can fail. It's a place and an exercise in which you're identifying your strengths and weaknesses, because to go into an incident, and I'm sure we've been part of incidents where we know there's certain people you got to slap around and tell them to get out of it, just because they don't know and aren't able to remain calm and collective when something's transpiring that is, a dumpster fire.
And most tabletop exercises, the people who have done them, even highly seasoned, doing them several times a year, et cetera, they're used to doing things, what we call a hand wave, like, yep, oh, I would just do that. And then magically it happened. Yep. And that's not the way it works. And so by going through the exercise that we do, we don't allow for people to hand wave things. So if they say, I'm going to go find the hash of the malware, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, our team is going to say, okay, how are you doing that? And if they don't have the right answer, then they don't find the thing that they're looking for. So they have to come up with a better answer. And this is how you uncover things. I'm missing tools. I'm missing diagrams. I lack resources.
Yep.
Our comms are too interdependent upon our internet connectivity. All of those things get uncovered when you actually go through the cyber exercise.
And one of the gaps that came up over and over again was the lack of communication. And so just to touch on that, one of the things that would happen, let's say you're at the executive team's table and you're talking to them, and the CISO says, yeah, well, I would go talk to I talked to the technical team about this and got some detail. And Brett would say, oh, you talked to him, huh? When did you talk to him? Well, I'm just saying I talked to him. Well, if you don't actually get up from the table, walk over and talk to them, they're not going to know what it is you're trying to tell them. So then the CISO would actually stand up, walk across the room, go to that table, say, okay, guys, listen up, and then roll out whatever you wanted to say. So this is an actual simulation, which was really, really cool to see from that perspective.
Well, and a question many people might have is, well, how does this scale? Can it scale up? Can it scale down? And the answer is yes. So the statewide exercise for Arizona, or for the state, was there's multiple agencies and groups involved, right? So the scale is large, and the people involved is large, and what they're going on and who's all talking and how those communication channels occur is a larger scale. Now, if we talk to it from a national bank perspective, or a smaller organization where they may have 5 resources dedicated to IT, dedicated to help desk, dedicated to security, and then they're working with an MSSP to offset their security, one of the mechanisms we do to downscale is to get them all, or have representatives from those different departments or institutions around the table, so that hand waving can't occur. And so that if they do try or attempt to hand wave, you press the issue and ask probing questions to see what might happen. So we had done this as Tech Data for one of our partners and customers, which again, they have what they need around security, but they hadn't done something like this. So this is for hardened environments, I'd say, environments that are doing what they need to around their quarterly vulnerability scans or annual penetration tests. They may have some things on the books in terms of what they got for their playbooks and run sheets, but they haven't put it into action or execution. And so what this exercise permits them to do is have that aspect and to go through it. So when you give them a situation of ransomware going rampant in their environment, and you ask the engineer who doesn't have a written charter of what they should do in terms of a run sheet, and he tells you, well, I'd immediately isolate the node, and I'd immediately take it off the system, turn it off, and that's how we're going to isolate it. And you turn to his manager and say, would you take those steps, or do you want him to take those steps? And it's like, well, no, because the manager knows more beyond the moment you shut it off, you can lose forensic data. So he says, well, these are the measures or steps I would like for my team to take. So now it's a learning opportunity for everyone across the board to recognize what their chartered command, so to speak, or measures should be. And now they can say, that isn't something we have documented. Let's get it documented. And it goes beyond that as well to say, in the organization where we're expecting many people to wear different hats, we now have to provide training to them, because we talk about a bus factor, right? Or a 3-layer deep approach. So if the guy who is supposed to be spearheading the initiative on security isn't available and doesn't know and can't do what he needs to do for the incident, and it has to go a 2nd layer deep, does that guy understand? Okay, if the 2nd layer deep doesn't know, does the 3rd layer understand?
So to give you, that's great background and teeing this up, Josh. So now we're going to kind of walk through the actual experience, and Brett's going to talk through, he's going to basically kick this off as if he's standing in front of the room, explaining the exercises, and then we're going to walk you through the different pieces of information that gets added to the equation, a lot of the randomness that's also injected into the system. So I'm going to let Brett tee this up just like he would in front of the room.
Yep, awesome. So this is a real-world cyber exercise based on real-world threat intelligence. There will be many of you that will try to game the system. When you do so, you are only cheating yourself. This is meant to help you understand how your response mechanisms and plans and strategies will work in a real-world situation. Do everyone a favor, including your team and yourself, and go through this exercise as you would as if this was a cyber incident you were encountering. So that's how we set them up, and then we say, okay, here is the basic premise. A unknown hacking organization has contacted you, and they claim they have full control of your networks, and they have some demands, and those demands are going to be pretty pricey. But your team, when they first look at it, find it is probably not very credible. This may be just some people blowing smoke. But this is the email communication that is sent to strategic parts of the tactical and the C-level team. So the first indication to an experienced team would be, well, they knew who to talk to. So we're dealing with a threat that's smart enough to know to do that. Others will just say, this looks like random email. The format of the cyber exercise is actually choose your own adventure. So at this point, the C-level team and the tactical management team have a choice. Do you want to tell your technicians that these threats have come in? Do you want to let your rest of your organization know? And they can either choose yes or no. Again, we have no skin in the game what their answer is. We are simply saying, what do you guys want to do? And then based on that, that defines how the exercise responds to their response. So this is the initial letter that they get, and then the first choice that we ask them to make is, do you want to let the rest of your organization know this is going on?
Summarize this letter in 30 seconds.
It essentially says, we're bad guys, we think you're awful people, we've got complete control of your networks for the last 2 years, and for all of these reasons, you need to then now pay us because you're bad people, and we're going to make you better because you're going to go through this experience.
It's a ransom note.
Yeah, essentially.
So from my experience sitting there, I'm watching the guy from the tactical team read this email to everyone that's sitting at the table, and the thought is, okay, what do I do with this? I mean, and just watch what happens and see the breakdown in communication, see people that step up and say something needs to be done. Maybe I need to go talk to the C-level people, but watching this unfold. So the next,
so one of the things is that during the exercise, you can choose to engage with different parties like law enforcement, insurance companies, legal teams, or even third-party contractors. So if they choose to engage law enforcement here or any time later than here, law enforcement is going to deliver back to them this series of tweets that occur, and they can see that there are these nefarious characters talking about the cyber incident, and they're chatting amongst themselves. You will also see that the organization, which is called Normie organization, the Normie folks are responding saying, look, you guys are being fake, and this is a false claim. And by the way, we prosecute, so like you guys are in trouble now, and we're coming for you. So the whole point of this is to set up the fact that this is a second set of data that says there are others than this one letter talking about the cyber incident. One of our people might have jumped ahead of the organization and said, go away, we're going to prosecute you. And then, of course, this law enforcement would also then advise them with other stuff. We'll see a letter that they send back to the organization. This is some of their own people. So Mr. Biz and Normie are both chattering on and saying, look, these guys are full of it. This is all false. Don't stop bothering us. Go play somewhere else, kind of thing. So what happens next in the exercise after they either choose to communicate or not communicate, again, we have no skin in the game on that, is there is a small hardware failure that occurs on a fairly insignificant system. And when IT goes to recover that system, they're instantly presented with this ransomware, which meant that their system was infected on the backup. And so now they can't restore the system. So this actually is information that goes only to the technical team. So now the technical team has the choice. Well, okay, do we want to talk about it? If management didn't tell them something's going on, they have no way of connecting that these two might be related to each other. If they did tell them that, then they may or may not choose to say that this stuff's going on. We have no skin in the game what their choice is. But then the answer is, okay, this ransomware is broken out. What do you guys want to do with this ransomware? And so this is an evaluation that was a quick report, a sit-rep report put together by a technical person that says, here's what I did, here's what happened, and we're working on it. We're gonna deal with it. So that's, and then this, if you want to add anything. Or.
Yeah, just in the experience of the room, so you're watching this, them reading this and kind of sitting around looking at each other like, what do we do in this case? Well, one of the guys had a suggestion, we need to block those segments. And the thought, well, the protocol is for them to go talk to the tactical team and communicate what's going on and get their buy-in that we need to do this. However, one of the guys, he said, no, what I think we should do, in talking to Brett, and Brett says, well, you do what you think you're supposed to do. And that is to go ahead and take action in that moment and stop those segments. So he blocked the segments, and then he got up and he went and talked to the tactical team and says, hey, here's what's happened. Here's what we need to do to stop the bleeding, and this is what we've already done. That gets communicated. And Brett, expound upon this, because when we do debriefs at each break, so there's at each exercise, rather than doing a big debrief at the end, there's a break where we then talk through what worked and what didn't work and what lessons were learned. And that was one of the things that was communicated, and not just there, but also an executive a step earlier made a really good move in how he bypassed different procedures to really get at the people that needed to hear the information. So talk through that.
Yeah, so we are giving people debriefs after each, what we call an event. So we have an exercise, and then in this particular exercise, the one we did, there were 6 events that can or should occur. And so after event 1, we say, okay, we're pausing time now. Let's talk about what just happened there. And it may involve all of the room. It depends if they involved everybody. If they didn't involve everyone, then we're only talking to the people that got noticed. And so we will then debrief them and say, okay, here's what's going on. And when a ransomware claim comes in, you can't chase every single one that's made. I mean, your organization can be nullified based on emails. So, here are the things to consider. Here are things you could use to assess the veracity of the claim. Here are some folks you could have engaged with to help with the assessment of that. And so the net effect of this is we are injecting knowledge, expertise, and things into the incident itself without changing the destination or outcome of that. We're just simply giving them information that they can use to take away that says, oh, when I'm seeing things like this, these are the connections. But we will not make connections for them in the incident, at the time of the incident, if they have not helped make them themselves. So again, this is a situation where if they could have involved several other parties where we could have shared a whole bunch of additional information regarding that. For example, in the ransomware itself, the hackers involved, all kinds of information could have been augmented, and they chose to augment some, but not all. And again, we will then go back in their final report and say, you all should have engaged these guys, you should have engaged those guys, et cetera. So,
and one of the things that came out that I thought was really powerful was, the communication, but that you need to empower your people. And Brett emphasized that over and over again. Empower your people. And again, this is being said in front of the executive team, and everyone's hearing this. And you can look at the cultural environment, and you see certain body language, you see facial expressions in the room as you're bringing up certain things. And when you talk about empowering your people to actually be able to make decisions in the moment and not have to run everything up the chain, when you're in a crisis, it's critical that happens. And Brett was really good about emphasizing when those things were done the right way and giving a platform to be able to articulate what really needs to happen and to get that dialogue happening. It fostered that important piece of communication that needs to get out there so that they can start preparing for how they're going to actually communicate effectively when it's a real situation.
And by the way, there are elements of chance in this. So we actually use rolling dice. So when you have a breakout like this, it starts infecting the rest of your network segments. And if certain die rolls are done, then other network segments get done. We collect some of that data up front. And as a result, true random numbers generate how much of an infection you're dealing with. And that's true of real life. So in this particular scenario here, this is the next thing that we do. So we see that we're expecting the organization will see the ransomware and will immediately begin trying to remediate that ransomware. Well, so this is another inject in the cyber exercise world that would allow a seasoned team to understand that the claims that the bad guys have complete control of your network is completely true. To the unseasoned team, this will look at, oh my gosh, these guys keep threatening us with all this crazy stuff. So you see the stuff that's in bold that says complete summary of everything said and or done. And that is actually, we have to hand wave that because it's a choose your own adventure style. We cannot dynamically build this particular document. So they're just going to have to take it on our word that they got it all right. But the idea of this is the bad guys say, we noticed that you're evading our penalties and we don't like that. And there's now going to be an even greater consequence for you trying to cheat the system instead of complying with our demands. So again, this places them in a situation where an experienced team says, oh gosh, they really do have complete control of our networks because they see everything that we're doing. And now as a part of incident response, if the bad guys can see everything that you're doing, does your plan allow you to function, or does your plan completely break down at that moment and you can't do a darn thing? The point of this is we're going to uncover all of that with randomization, with all these other things that help drive people to the answer and walk them through what happened to them in real life.
So think about the effect of if you don't have it set up on how you're going to communicate in a crisis like this. Let's say this happens and the CEO says, okay, everyone, sends out an email, we've been hacked and we're going to use this chat mechanism to communicate. Well, the bad guys control everything in the network. They're in there. So they get to see the email. They know where you guys are going to be, what chat app you're going to be using. So it really exposes the fact that you need to have dialogue in a offline where you say, okay, when we're in a crisis like this, this is the app we're going to use. It's going to be outside of our network and we're going to communicate that way. So it really bubbled up for this group. They hadn't thought that through. And so they were communicating via email and other mechanisms, and they didn't have that set up. So they did set it up finally, but it took them a while to figure that out.
Right, and of course, this was a very seasoned team, lots of cyber exercises under the belt. What was uncovered was that their response mechanisms, when they're in this type of crisis, do not meet the needs of dealing with these kind of responses, and it effectively neutralizes them. So this inject here is when they contact police, law enforcement. So we're expecting by the time the ransomware is breaking out everywhere, they're going to want to involve the law enforcement. So this is the report back that law enforcement gives them. So it's a local police department. I've contacted the FBI. Here's what they're saying about the bad guys that make this claim and all the other things like that. So depending on where they do, they get this and or more information, and what they've chosen to do, they get that or more information. This is truly choose your own adventure, and you're only going to experience what you have engaged. And as a direct result, you could quite literally do the same exercise with the same group of people 2 times in a row, and they could actually end up with 2 completely different experiences. So, all right, and then so this one here is a media inquiry. So now we are saying to the C-level folks, okay, this fire is now burning outside your organization. It's no longer a secret that this is happening to you. Now you're getting these media inquiries from folks saying, I know something bad's happened to you, et cetera. And so the idea of all of this is part of the fog of war. How do you deal with inquiries? How do you deal with your people trying to respond to things and all the priorities and urgencies and communications blocks and all the things that are there? This is meant to put you through it all because a lot of folks that have a cyber incident response plan, their one and only answer for what happens if the media calls me is we have a designated person, but then they don't necessarily know who that person is and they don't know how to refer it. And so now we make them go through that thought and experience that process to get to how can we do that better? How will anyone know who to refer them to, et cetera, et cetera. So
I thought one of the interesting things too is we had the National Guard that was at this one exercise with us. So you had actual guys in fatigues that were in the room, in the back of the room, who were listening in, who then interjected, okay, here's how we would get involved and what we would and what we would not do, and actually talk through what they would actually do to step in and to assist and what they wouldn't be doing and how you're supposed to guide them. But what I thought was really interesting is these guys could show up at the building and say, yeah, we're here with the National Guard, and would they get access into the servers and all that equipment? How do you know that those guys that are showing up in fatigues are actually with the National Guard? You can get fake IDs, you can get fake documents that you can present. And so that was also exposed because most people in the room had no idea what a DOD badge actually looked like. If they know if it was legit or not. So it brought up the fact that you should really try and build a relationship ahead of time with, let's say, the National Guard or other local law enforcement or the FBI, where you actually can put a face with the name and know who this person is when they show up. Because keep in mind, the bad guys are watching everything. They know that guys are showing up, and if you're communicating saying, yeah, we got the National Guard or we've been hacked, they could actually be the guys showing up, the bad guys at that point. I thought that was fascinating.
And again, that gets to reality because, again, we know for a fact that these kinds of things are taking place. You're not really hearing about them yet, but I promise you, you will. So, again, we're giving them tomorrow's news today, and they're rehearsing exactly how they will be fighting in the near future. So, again, there's another media inquiry. Let's go to the next one here. One more. And this one here is from a blogger who, by the way, for a seasoned security team, is going to notice that the blogger seems to know more information than all the other media people. So now there are other considerations there. Well, if I am going to talk to the media, which ones do I talk to? And maybe I'm talking to someone who is familiar or friendly to the bad guys, and they are using your public media information to then use information against you during the cyber incident. So again, we're helping people to understand the complexities in the fog of war. Again, you're going to learn these things before there's a problem. So another thing that we're going to do in this is we're going to inject political problems. So as we know, we live in a world full of politicians that love to crow about every single thing that's possibly there. So this is a situation where you have a law and order type politician who says, on my watch, this will not stand. We're going to prosecute this. I'm your man. And then the next letter is actually his opponent who says, oh, yeah, this guy failed. This is why I need to be elected. And so it creates another dynamic. So what if you are not only dealing with the media and the public, but now you have an out of control set of politicians that are out there pushing this narrative that they made up and now are using your cyber incidents for their political objective. So that's the kind of stuff that helps organizations understand the complexities of these things. Okay, so in fog of war, there's proliferation of malware on the network. They're dealing with politicians, they're dealing with policymakers, they're dealing with all kinds of things. And in the end of this, more than likely, they will not have complied with the terms. And so this is the final letter that says, you should have listened to us. You guys are being really dumb for not listening to us. And now we're going to really make you pay. So whether they contained the outbreak on the malware or they did anything else like that, for us, this is a new inject, and what the bad guys are going to do is they're going to press the nuclear button and say, okay, you didn't listen. We're going to ransom every one of your systems and let that outbreak, and we call that's event 4 doomsday, right? And so now, okay, you thought you contained it, it didn't get contained. Now you have crisis. Now what do you guys want to do? And so because of all of that, it helps you to connect with, okay, even when we have plans, there could still be leakages or failures, and now how do we deal with that?
So that's the experience. Now this is over a 4-hour period, and there's all this downtime in between each one of these exercises, and these are trickled through these different pieces of information. But what's fascinating is just the people that would sit there and not do anything because they didn't really know what to do. And you realize that certain people just didn't have the run book, they didn't know how to execute on it, and then you'd see the people that took a leadership role and says, I'm going to fix this, and would get up and walk to other tables and talk to other departments, and we're actually the ones solving the problem. You saw who your leaders were, who are the people that were passive, the people that were checked out, people that were completely disengaged, and those that were totally engaged. So it's a very big eye-opener for the executive team who's watching all of this and gaining all this feedback. So in summary, why don't you bring up what the CISO said, and then it would be good for maybe Josh to summarize his experience with the bank and anything we want to do to wrap up this call.
Absolutely. So we had a tremendous response. The first thing that the CISO said for the state was, yeah, we're doing this 4 times a year. And then there were a couple other people that says, tell me you got all this stuff in notes. There were so many amazing takeaways. I've never had so much great takeaways from anything we've ever done together, and I'm looking forward to doing this again. So just a huge response, and so we of course will be doing a lot more with those guys. Josh actually did a walkthrough only version of this with a major bank, regulators, and an MSSP were present at the time that they did that, and I'll let him talk to you how that went.
Yeah, so I mean, the same back was very similar. They hadn't seen anything like it before. From their experiences in the past with cyber exercises, there had been hand waving where you couldn't fully dive into how to respond to what you've encountered. From the regulator's perspective for FinTech, she's communicating the interest in having these done as a benchmarking mechanism to understand where national and commercial and all these different types of banks stand. From the bank's perspective, it was able to help them identify areas within their own playbooks, runbooks, policies, and procedures that they needed to shore up and solidify the strength around so that they were more confident in their own cyber resiliency. And from the MSSP's perspective, who has done some of this before or who has been involved in other exercises, the way they communicated was the fact that we were able to get everyone in a room and be willing to talk about, or what we call open the kimono, and get into areas that are uncomfortable or that aren't usually gone into, was a true testament to the value in the exercise, because you're really able to see what it is from a customer's expectation, from a SOC's perspective, what the SOC is truly able to meet and excel at and where they might fall short. And then for the operations to say, okay, whether or not they need to find more funding to either fill gaps from a technology perspective or just give more time and resources to the security officer to get more people on his team.
And just to wrap this up, because I know we're a little bit over time, but we'll tie this up right now. You as a partner don't need to feel like you have to know how to pitch this or explain this. There's a need for this. Hopefully there's enough information here that you can get at least interest in learning more. Bring our team in. We can talk to you about the solution, and we can assist you in actually closing the business and then rolling it out. And so you don't need to feel like you've got to be the expert on this. So apologize for all the background noise that's going on.
It's a fun day today, but I'll tell you this though, from a business standpoint, one of the neatest thing that I thought was part of what Josh did was the first response was the regulator that was present and the MSSP that was present brought us an additional 23 leads, which for that partner, all of that business will go through that partner as a direct result of doing one of these cyber exercises. So not only can we help you, even though you might not feel comfortable with executing to this task, you might say this is beyond us. It was honestly beyond the partner that we work with, and they recognized that. However, they found that we were credible and can handle it for them, and they are now not only considered great at cybersecurity because of working with the tech data team, but they now have 23 new leads of new businesses to follow up on the same exact experience, all as a result of doing this one on cyber exercise with us. So there's a tremendous value to you as a partner to bring this to market.
So any of you partners that are in our Practice Builder program, reach out to the SBCs that are working with you in your program. If you want to learn more about this, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can engage Brett and Josh. We can talk one-on-one about this and give you more information. So thanks everyone for your attention on this call, and we'll see you next month on the next 30 Minute with a Hacker call. Take care.